For many Detroiters, the intersection of Warren and Southfield is just another exit on another freeway. For the 20,000 or so residents of the Warrendale neighborhood, though, Warren and Southfield is where a century-old community intersects the suburbs and the city. Warrendale has always been a strong community of Detroiters living in neat rows of ranches and bungalows, and it's seeing a resurgence of residents, people who want to move back to the city. But there are also some families who have never left. In the 1920s, the former village had just been annexed by the city of Detroit, while its residents still farmed to supplement their incomes. This is the story of one Russian immigrant who decided to move his growing family from Hamtramck back to the country, to Warrendale.
I'm Tom Reed. I'm here with the Sisoy family, whose home stands behind me. It's been here since 1928. 4 generations have occupied it. Please come with me on this episode of
Dig in Detroit!
Today we're with the Sisoy family. They have graciously invited us into their home. I have 3 generations sitting on the couch here with me today. I have Lorene and Pete, their daughter Leslie, and her daughter Bailey. Pete, your parents actually built this home, correct?
They had it built, right.
And they were immigrants, were they not?
Oh, yes.
Where did they come from?
They came from Russia, actually White Russia,
Okay.
below Minsk, and I was born in 1922.
Now, when they came to this country, they just entered into an enclave that was already Russian, correct?
Well,
They moved to
they had a,
Hamtramck.
they were in a Russian group, you know. And,
When they came here.
because they couldn't speak English, so they had to be with people that could speak Russian, you know.
Right.
So then after living in Hamtramck, my mother had asthma and hay fever. And the doctor suggested moving out in the country where the air was a little cleaner, getting away from the contaminated air in the city, you know. So that's when we moved out here in 1928.
To the country.
It was country. There's nothing between our house and Warren Avenue.
Uh-huh.
We used to burn the fields all the way from across the street from all that house, all the way to Warren Avenue. Now, firemen never came out because there's nothing to burn out here, see. That was our playground.
In fact, you could hear the wolves from Rouge Park.
You know, my dad was a farmer. He loved all this free land that we had around here. And I hated farming because he would shovel the dirt. I'd throw in a half a potato. You know, for kids, it's boring as all hell, you know. So we had corn on this side of the house. On this side, we had actually a small farm. We had chickens and ducks and what have you. And my dad had the garage built first, so that we could live in the garage for several months while they're building the house, of course, to protect the property and what have you, you know. Plus, we were getting interest or rent from the house we had in Hamtramck, you know. So that made a difference, too. So eventually, I used to come in here and watch them put the ceiling up, and we used to sleep on the floor. We didn't have a bed yet. When Christmas came, we were still sleeping on the floor. So eventually, it became a livable house.
The plaster work is just beyond anything I've seen in a residential
And
home. It's beautiful.
all three rooms had chandeliers like we have in the vestibule there, and but they were too big when Lorene and I got married.
I didn't like them. Back in those days, that was old-fashioned, and nobody wanted it. So I made him take them out. Now I wish we still had them. But
So-
in hindsight's never as good as foresight. The same with the doors. But actually, this house was very well built because we've done nothing to the structure of the house.
Hank Ford used to survey his property almost every day. We used to see him driving around,
Yeah.
chauffeur. Well, we used to play in the woods. Well, I actually met Henry Ford because he caught us one day, and he warned us about chasing the cows because the cows wouldn't have any milk if they were all excited, you know. So we had to cut down on that. But the big thing, if I suppose I should mention it, is the fact that there's a pond in the middle of the Ford's Woods, And in the hot summer day, we used to go there and wade around and splash water. You know, it's like 2 feet of mud, 2 feet of water, you know. And one day he came by and he saw us. He came over and he says, "How come you're playing in this muddy water?" And I said, "Well, it's hot, you know." Here we were, only about 12 years old, and he says, "Would it be okay if we kind of dug it out and made it a little deeper for you?" And I said, "Gee, that'd be great." So before too long, men came, dug it out, filled it with sand, and eventually it filled up with water from a small creek that fed it. So the rest of the summer we had our own private swimming
So he
pool.
was
You
a
know?
personality that was seen
Oh, yeah.
around here. He wasn't just a...
And so eventually, practically the whole neighborhood came to swim there. And he came the third time I met him was when he came by and recognized us. He called us over, and my buddy and I, and he said, "You know, we're having a problem here." He says, "Everybody's peeing in the water, and the water is not so clean anymore. You know, there's not enough water to clean it out." So he says, "If we put in 2 johns here, outdoor johns, would the kids use it?" I said, "Oh yeah, you know." So the next day there's boys and girls, you know,
Wow.
1-holders, you know. So by the end, anyway, every day men would come out and check the water for bacteria. Well, finally they decided it was too much, so the bulldozers came, filled it in, and there goes our swimming pool. But I really enjoyed or gave him credit for doing what he did.
Absolutely.
But he was actually sort of a hands-on type of person for his property, because he drove around his property all the time.
Country life on the outskirts of Detroit was filled with adventures, fresh fruit, and tree houses. Pete Sisoy and his family took us out back where the orchards used to be and where he lived with his parents in the garage while the house was being built.
I'm here with Lisa and Leslie, and Kendal and Bailey. So I've got 2 generations here of the Sisoys. Now, Lisa, you were saying you had some memories of many fruit trees and some animal
Gardens, all kinds of stuff. I lived here I was born in 53. I got married in 82, so I lived here until I was 27. It was a beautiful neighborhood when I was growing up. It had lots of children in it. We played all the time. I remember ice rinks in the winter, gardens in the summer. My grandparents grew lots of fruits and vegetables. There were many, many fruit trees, peach trees, 2 cherry trees, 2 apple trees, 2 pear trees, plum trees, lots of fir trees, multiple gardens. We used to come out here, pick fresh fruit, and we'd eat. We'd scoop out cucumbers and make cups out of them, drink water out of them from the faucet.
Now, Lisa, did this yard extend beyond?
Not
what you
when
see
I
here?
grew up.
Because that seems like a lot of trees.
It does seem, looking at it now, it seems very small, but half the yard was garden, the other half was grass with the fruit trees intermingled. There were an apple tree and a cherry tree here, and that corner
tree was here.
was before this was transplanted. That corner was the old rabbit hutch, which we used as
cherry
a playhouse. We didn't know it was a rabbit hutch. It was our playhouse. We had a grape arbor over it. My grandpa brought us bunnies every year from the Eastern Market when we were little that we got to play with till they were big. We came home from school one day. He'd tell us they ran off to the woods, which were at the end of the street, later to find out he ate them.
And we would hang out in the apple tree, and my dad taught us how to tie ropes between the V branches, throw a hunk of carpet over it, and we would like lounge up there. Very safe. And then we had a cable he ran from the pear tree, and we would leap from that platform with a
Zip line?
yes,
Yeah, zip
with
line.
2
From
little
the porch to
metal
the pear tree.
handles, and just zip over there and crash into the back porch.
And Mom was okay with this?
Yes, she was, and he had a huge rope he hung from the garage for us. So it
Your
was.
boyfriends had to make sure they could climb.
Yeah, oh yes. Everyone that came over, you'd take him out here and say, "Can you climb the rope?"
Kendal and Bailey, do you guys remember all those trees in the garden? in the
No.
hutch?
We remember the pear trees, but I remember the raspberry bushes.
Yeah.
So behind the white garage, there's probably 6 feet of raspberries. Yeah, and that was what we always remembered. We'd come over and we'd get out of the car and go behind the garage before we went in the house to try to get like our plate of raspberries if Grandpa hadn't got up and beat us to them for his cereal.
So, Bailey, you mentioned the red garage and the white garage. Why do we have 2 garages here?
The family definition of garages. So the white garage, our whole lives has been where the cars get parked, but the red garage has always been kind of our grandpa's work bench and. in the boat in there. But it was originally built during World War II when the call was out to build more bunk housing for everybody coming to Detroit to work for the automobile and the war effort, exactly. So they started building this to be a bunkhouse, but VE Day happened before they finished, so it was never actually housing.
And when we were kids, my dad made the entire neighborhood rubber band guns with old tires, and we had actually like machine guns that you could put a whole bunch of rubber bands on and pull with a string. So we just had a riot out here.
The red garage here was your storage area, your workshop. But you were telling me something about these utensils I see on the wall here. Where did those come from?
Well, my dad, being from Russia, you don't have money in Russia. You make your own tools. So when he came here, he made those. He made several baskets.
That's his?
Yeah.
Wow.
The girls all have one.
That's fantastic.
So
it's a nice memento.
he's quite handy.
Yeah.
Of course, in the old days, you had to be.
Exactly.
Bailey and her sister Kendal start our tour on the inside of the house with their grandmother in its heart, the kitchen, of course. But there's another kitchen upstairs, a separate home where Pete and his bride raised their family after the war.
So we've been doing family holidays here our whole lives and our parents' whole lives, but it was amazing what my grandma could do out of this little kitchen. So they would do turkey in the big slow cooker here, and we would all just sort of hover. And then kids always eat in the kitchen because there's too many people to all fit downstairs. So you're a kid until there's kids younger than you. So we're almost 30 and we eat up here because there's not room at the table. But my grandma will cook for everybody. She'll probably have done thousands of pounds of turkey. And then behind us is the stairs upstairs, which we don't go upstairs if we can help it.
I slept upstairs for 6 months and woke up nightly.
Yeah.
Oh, are you kidding?
No! You know it too! Because there's a ghost up there.
Great grandpa and great grandma checking on you.
And Mom would tell stories of how she would wake up in the night to feeling her foot being tickled and have to say, "It's okay, Grandpa. I'm okay."
And when you lived up here, did you have the kitchen?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a kitchen, a full kitchen up here, and its own bathroom, and then 3 bedrooms. So when my grandparents first got married, our great-grandparents lived on the ground floor with their older daughter and her husband and their children. And my grandparents moved up here, and they had their own little setup.
Right.
And would you cook all your own meals, or would
Yes,
you?
I did. And Grandma slept in this room right here, which is now Pete's office. Yeah, this was the dining room, that was the living room, and that was the bedroom.
So you had your own apartment?
Yeah, we had our own space here, yeah. And Grandma never ate with us. She did her own cooking downstairs with her daughter.
But you say your bedroom in this home is up here?
Kendall's bedroom is up here.
All right.
Mine's downstairs.
You live...
That was mine, but that was my uncle's before.
Yeah.
So that was Greg's room.
There's normally some pretty fierce debates on Sunday dinners and holidays of whose bedroom is whose. Because my bedroom used to be Aunt Peggy's
On the main
floor all the way back in the day.
Yeah.
Then it was Lisa's, but it's still with my wallpaper, so it's officially mine.
Because you were the last one.
Yeah, this used to be Greg's, and then it was yours.
Sleep in here.
But
Yeah.
when everybody moved out and the grandparents died, then we lived downstairs, and my son had his bedroom downstairs, and the 2 girls, Lisa and Leslie, lived upstairs. And when I say lived upstairs, literally they lived upstairs.
The family has witnessed the transformation of Warrendale as well as Detroit. We had a chance to hear about neighborhood and city life over 3 generations.
Most of these homes around here were built after the war.
Okay. And the people who built these homes, were they also Eastern European?
There was a very ethnic neighborhood.
A lot of
A lot of Polish and Russian people living.
Family next door have
Basically.
been Polish.
It was very
Second generation
ethnic.
living there now,
Yeah.
So, but the rest of the neighborhood, it's quite a mixture now.
You were friends with the people who were in your school. And a lot of the kids who went to school with me came here from Poland. Most of them came from Poland during the war. when they were being evacuated and they were leaving and trying to get out of the country. And these kids, I think about these kids today, and I think these kids came to this country. They didn't speak English. They put them in the public school system, sink or swim.
So you were talking about the Polish businesses that originally populated the main streets around here. What kind of businesses were they?
Well, for one thing, we used to go to Podgorski's, I think it is. It used to be a candy store.
Meat market.
And then there was the meat markets up and down Warren Avenue, and there's still a bakery, Shane Bakery.
There was a Truan's here on Warren Avenue, a couple of small theaters, very small theaters, one here and one in Warrendale, west of Southfield. We'd get on the streetcar down here and transfer at Wyoming to a bus and go down to Mackenzie High School.
Okay.
And so that was the way that was. And all the time we were growing up, we did other things in the city. I can remember going downtown when I was young. Mm-hmm. Here we go again, taking the streetcars all by myself with a girlfriend, young, downtown, shop at Hudsons. Hudsons was a wonderland. Hudsons was the kind of store that you dream about. They had things in Hudson's that they don't have anywhere else. They used to have areas where they had desks, and they had stationery, fine stationery, note paper, pens. You could write your notes. You could go there, do your letters. You could write your notes, seal them up in a mailbox to mail them. Like when I was in high school, I went to the Grande and the Grande Ballroom.
So Leslie, what did you see on those main streets?
We had the Warren Theater, and Saturdays we'd walk to the Warren Theater, stop at the candy store, get candy. The whole neighborhood would be filled with just kids in there for, those great old horror movies. We would go out during the day, and our parents would say, okay, be home in time for dinner. Then we'd eat dinner and do whatever we had to do, clean up, and if there was homework or if it was summer, then it was you're out until the street lights were on again. Then you'd come home and say, okay, we're going to go play out hide and seek in the dark. Okay, go. And
there was a lot of freedom of movement
we
for the
had a lot of freedom.
Now, Bailey, you grew up not in this home, but in this neighborhood, correct?
Yes, and I don't ever remember having babysitters. We had family. So we'd be at grandma's 4 times a week or with a cousin.
I hear there's a story here of how you two met.
Oh,
Oh yeah, here we go.
well, that was my sister dated him a couple of times, I guess, before the war. And of course, we were walking down the street one day, my sister and I. She was visiting.
Yeah, but let's get before that. My sister wanted to go to work when the kids grew up. She had nothing to do with my brother-in-law said, if you're going to work for yourself. So he's built a party store at the end of this block on Warren Avenue. So she took care of that while he worked. And then I helped at the store. Well, I used to see her walk by.
You used to see Lorene walk by.
No, the sister.
Oh.
Her.
Yeah.
She was coming home from school. I used to walk by and I said, geez, how can I meet her, So I eventually got a motorcycle from a buddy of mine. The two of us had motorcycles. And coming home one day, I was getting ready to turn into my street, and I recognized Maisie, who I had dated before the war, walking with her. So I went over the curb and I went on the sidewalk, and hi Maisie, who's your friend? She said, that's my sister. So that's how we met. Anyway, so that kind of got the ball rolling. So
anyway, he invited us back to this house.
Uh-huh.
He said, come by the house. My friend and I are weightlifting. Well, weightlifting. What was weightlifting? I didn't know what weightlifting was from anything. And my sister, she didn't care. She was a happy-go-lucky person. She said, oh, let's go by the house for a little while. I haven't seen Pete for a long time. So we came over here, and they're down in the basement in this sweaty guys shoving these weights up in the air, and I thought, what am I doing here? So that was how we met.
Our first date.
And like I say, I thought, what am I doing here? Look at them. But we were married in Hamtramck. at the All Saints Russian Orthodox Church in
Oh
Hamtramck.
yeah, we had quite a flowery wedding with the crowns over our head and all that,
That church isn't there anymore. It wasn't a very big church anyway, but anyway.
The other thing, we had 3 priests, and each priest walked us around the altar with and I jokingly tell people the reason we had 3 priests is because my mother wanted to make sure that we were really married because she's part Indian.
We'll end our tour of the Sisoy home in Pete's basement, which continues to be the center of holiday parties for the last half-century, but is also Pete's amazing museum to his loving family, Henry Ford, and his Russian heritage.
That's my mother and dad, and that's little old me, dressed like a sailor, and my sister Claire.
You were telling me that this jigsaw here actually made the frames for some of these other images here.
Oh yes. That's a foot-propelled jigsaw, in case you you don't see too many of those around.
So you have a lot of scrapbooks here, and these are some really amazing images.
And then here's where I lifted my wife over my head.
This looks like a vacation on Grosse Ile?
Yes. My Claire and Al had property on Grosse Ile, and that became our center point for all our activities. Almost every weekend we used to have parties there. Al Dubin, he was my buddy. We used to weightlift together and go motorcycling together. This is Hamtramck. In those days, everybody had a picture of it on a pony. So I was only about 4 years old there.
Pete, I want to thank you very much. You've spent a great deal of time with us, and you've been very open. This has really been fantastic. I appreciate all your time and your openness for us.
Well, after all, I enjoy talking about my memories. That's what this whole place is alive with, one memory after another.